In the sprawling city of Austin, Texas, where the hum of everyday life drowns out most whispers of tragedy, there once lived a young woman named Julie Ann Gonzalez. To her family, she was not just another face in the crowd, but a vibrant soul whose laughter could warm the coldest day. Her life, though simple on the surface, was filled with quiet dreams and a deep love for the one thing that meant more to her than anything else, her daughter. Welcome to Crime and Consequence. Julie Ann had always been the type of person others leaned on, dependable, nurturing, and fiercely loyal. Born into a close-knit family, she grew up with values rooted in love, compassion, and responsibility. Her relatives described her as someone who would sacrifice her own comfort to make sure others were taken care of. And when she became a mother, that instinct only grew stronger. Her daughter became her anchor, her reason to fight through even the most difficult days. But Julie Ann's adult life was far from a fairy tale. Her marriage to George de la Cruz began, as many do, with warmth and optimism. They had been drawn to each other by what seemed like genuine affection, deciding to cement that bond through marriage. For a while, they appeared happy. Their union was blessed with the birth of their daughter, a little girl who brought joy and purpose into their home. However, time has a way of revealing cracks in even the most beautiful beginnings. For Julie Ann and George, the early joy faded into disagreements and tension. Little arguments turned into bigger ones, and the emotional distance between them widened. As months passed, it became clear that reconciliation might be out of reach. Eventually, they separated, beginning a new chapter where the only link between them was their shared responsibility for their daughter. Julie Ann adjusted to single motherhood with remarkable grace. She built her days around her child's schedule, determined to protect her from the emotional fallout of a broken home. She and George maintained a custody arrangement that required regular exchanges of their daughter, moments that were often short, polite, and focused solely on their little girl's well-being. It was a fragile arrangement, but it worked. Until March 26, 2010. That morning began like any other. According to the custody schedule, Julie Ann was supposed to pick up her daughter from George's home. Her friends and family knew how committed she was to these arrangements. She was punctual, responsible, the kind of person who would never simply not show up. But that day, she didn't arrive. She didn't call. She didn't send a text. At first, her loved ones thought there might be a simple explanation, maybe traffic, maybe a last-minute errand. But as hours passed, the concern began to gnaw at them. Calls to her phone went unanswered. Messages remained unread. Her social media accounts, usually active, fell silent. By evening, fear had taken root. Julie Ann's family reported her missing. The Austin Police Department immediately began piecing together the events of that day. They spoke with George, who told them that Julie Ann had indeed come to his residence but left shortly afterward, saying she needed some time to herself and asking him to keep their daughter for a few more days. To police, it was a statement. To Julie Ann's family, it was a lie. Those who knew her best insisted she would never willingly separate from her daughter, not even temporarily, without a clear reason. She was a devoted mother. The idea that she would just walk away didn't fit the person they knew. Investigators began to pull at the threads. They traced her digital footprint, phone records, social media activity, and bank statements. What they found painted a chilling picture: no outgoing calls or texts after the day she vanished, no bank activity, no sign of life. For a woman as connected and communicative as Julie Ann, this sudden silence was alarming. The deeper they looked into George's account, the more inconsistencies emerged. Friends described the relationship between Julie Ann and George as strained, even volatile at times. Some spoke of controlling behavior, subtle but persistent. The separation had not eased tensions, it had simply moved them into a new form. As suspicion around George grew, police searched his property. There, in his backyard, they made a disturbing discovery: burned clothing and a knife. To the untrained eye, it might have been nothing more than discarded trash. But to investigators, it was potentially evidence of something much darker. Forensic analysis would later confirm the items were linked to the timeline of Julie Ann's disappearance. Then came another revelation. Someone had attempted to access Julie Ann's social media accounts after she went missing. Investigators believe this was an effort to manipulate the narrative, to make it seem as though she might still be alive, or perhaps to remove incriminating evidence. The community rallied behind the family. Flyers appeared on telephone poles, in store windows, and across social media feeds. Search parties formed, combing through fields, wooded areas, and abandoned lots. Yet, despite the effort, no trace of Julie Ann emerged. Months passed. The absence of a body made the case harder, but the evidence, circumstantial though it was, continued to mount. Eventually, authorities felt they had enough to move forward. George de la Cruz was arrested and charged with Julie Ann's murder. The trial that followed was as tense as it was heartbreaking. Without a body, the prosecution had to rely on a meticulous timeline, digital records, forensic findings, and witness testimony. They painted a portrait of a man whose marriage had crumbled, whose relationship with his wife had grown toxic, and who, faced with losing control, had taken the most irreversible action possible. And in that aching silence, another story began to echo, one that had unfolded decades earlier, but carried the same haunting refrain: a disappearance, a family desperate for answers, and a long, slow march toward justice. It was a cold winter day, unremarkable in most ways, except for one: it was the last day anyone would see Kim McVeigh alive. Kim was young, full of promise, with plans and routines her family knew well. That morning, she left home as she normally did. But when evening came, she didn't return. Hours stretched into a sleepless night for her family. By the next day, panic had set in. They called the Tulsa County Sheriff's Office, reporting her missing. Investigators began with the basics: interviews with friends, family, neighbors. They searched her home, her belongings, her known hangouts. The initial sweep revealed no signs of struggle, no clear leads. Door-to-door inquiries yielded little more than sympathetic shrugs. Days turned into weeks. The trail went cold. For years, Kim's name would linger in the files of the Tulsa County Sheriff's Office, a cold case with no movement. Rumors surfaced from time to time, sightings that never panned out, whispered theories that led nowhere. The family held on to hope, but as the decades passed, the weight of not knowing became almost unbearable. Then, in 1992, a grim discovery was made behind a storage shed at a property on North Memorial Drive, a property known to police as a hub for narcotics activity. Human remains were found, later identified as Kim McVeigh. The cause of death was a gunshot wound to the head. Still, the case did not immediately close. Leads were scarce, and one of the individuals believed to be involved had already died. It would take years, and the dedication of the Cold Case Task Force, to finally bring a suspect into custody. After more than 12 months of renewed investigation, Tommy Edward Harris was arrested in connection with Kim's murder. For the McVeigh family, the arrest brought long-awaited relief, but also reopened old wounds. Decades had passed since Kim's disappearance, and in that time, life had moved on for the world, but not for them. The defense countered with the argument that all of the evidence was circumstantial. No body, no crime, or at least, no proof beyond reasonable doubt. But the jury, after weighing the testimonies and evidence, found George guilty. The verdict brought some measure of justice to Julie Ann's family. But it was incomplete. There was no grave to visit, no definitive answer to what had happened to her. The case left a hollow ache, the kind that lingers for years. The pain of losing her had frozen time. Two women, two different cities, two different decades, yet bound by the same cruel thread, both vanished into the shadows of someone else's actions. Both left behind families who would fight for answers, for justice, for the right to know what happened to their loved one. Their stories remind us that behind every headline is a human life, a person with dreams, routines, loved ones. And they remind us that even when years pass, even when the trail goes cold, there are those who will not stop searching, those who will carry the weight of a case until the very end. If you found this case compelling, remember to like, share, and subscribe. And let these stories remind us all, justice delayed is not always justice denied. See you on the next video, Crime and Consequence.